Okay, so today's bite-sized training session is all about printing multiple pages onto one sheet. And there's lots of reasons for doing that. We'll come on to those in a little while. But before, I just want to say that the bite-sized training sessions that we run, we're really keen on you feeding back information so that we know what to do for the planning of the next bite-sized training. So if you've got any particular interests or you're having problems with any of the options within Interform, let us know, and I'll build something for the future. The bite-sized training is designed as a 15 to 30-minute training session where we'll whiz through a particular aspect of the software products, so that you can learn about some of the new features or some of the things you may not have seen before. So when we're talking about printing multiple pages, we refer to this in Interform as multi-up. And basically what the multi-up feature gives us is the ability to combine multiple spool files and process them as one individual page. So it's kind of virtually taking a number of spool files. So if we set the multi-up value to 3, then it will take the first 3 pages and treat that as a single page. And then within the designer, then we can remap all of the information from those 3 pages and print it onto one page. Now, this is particularly useful when you're producing dispatch labels. Sometimes you have perforated paper and you might have A5 labels on an A4 sheet, or you might have 3 A6 labels or 4 A6 labels on an A4 sheet. And what we'll do is we'll take individual pages, merge them together so that we can actually fit more onto one page. But typically things like address labels, when you get an A4 sheet of say 8 or 10 labels, you want to produce more pages onto one actual output. But then you can use it for booklet printing, so you can actually print the whole page, an A4 page in an A5 style, and print it landscape. So you can print the left hand and the right hand page side by side. All sorts of reasons for why we will use this. This is just an image, so we basically take it on the left-hand side, in this case, multiple pages of the spool file, and this is the typical type of output that we're going to produce. We've got label 1, label 2, label 3, label 4, and so on the actual output sheet. And we do this in Interform. I'm going to jump onto the designer in a little while, but we have this option on the General tab in Documents. It's called multi-up. The default is set to 1. And when you change the default from 1 to, in this case, 2, you'll see that in the designer spool file window, you now have 2 pages of spool file displayed as if it was one page. And if you just quickly go back, you'll see that the spool file contains 16 pages, whereas in multi-up mode, because we're printing 2 to a page, we're now going to end up with 8 pages of output. So it shows you that in the designer itself. And then the actual production of the label. This is just showing us the label at the top expanded in case you can't see due to the size of the screen. So we've got spool file 1 at the top, starting at line 1 to 30, and then the spool file 2 gets tagged on to the same page, so that whereas the first page starts at line 1 to 30, the second page starts at line 31 and goes to line 60. So we'll come on to that in a little bit more detail. And we then design the individual mapping of the label itself with a separate overlay, and we call this a sub-overlay. And within the main overlay, we use a conditional element to bring in that sub-overlay and position it at the various varying positions on the page itself. Okay, so we define the instructions for building the label once, and then we repeat that several times for each time we put the label out onto the page. Okay, so in the main overlay, you're going to end up with something that's looking similar to this. So you've got conditional overlay, and you'll notice you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in this case 8, because I'm producing 8 labels, or actually 10 labels output. So I'm using a conditional element within the main overlay to drive the formatting of an individual label, and repeating that 10 times throughout the page and varying the position. So when you come to make changes to the label, you change the sub-overlay, and that replicates the output through all 10. So you're not having to repeat the actual instructions. Okay, so now I'm just going to jump onto the design, and we'll actually run through an example of this. If I open my my multi-up example, I can see here, these are the instructions on the left-hand side. This is the spool file window, and this is the result page. And we can see from the spool file that we've got multiple pages of individual spool file. So let me just go back to my document tab. If I change this from 10 to 1, I see that I've got an individual spool file. This particular spool file looks a little bit strange because I've narrowed it down to only 25 characters. Actually, I'll produce this with a query 400 report, and I've set the wrapping width on the report to 25, which is why it's only very narrow. Normally you would have a 132 column report or whatever, and I've set the number of lines within the query to say I only want to print 30 lines. So that is the spool file as it appears, and then when we say we want to use a multi-up of 10, you'll see if I scroll down, I don't know how this is going to appear on with a delay on your screen, but you got up to 10 labels all merged virtually into one page. And then you can see on the right hand side we have label 1, label 2, all the way down to label 10. Okay, and if we look at the conditional elements, take the first one. The first one first of all highlights in blue the area of the page that we're dealing with. If I click on the second one, you'll see it shoot down to the second label. So that's because I've set the line, the start and the end line of the remapping function for this conditional element to start at line 16 to 22. So that covers the data that appears for label 1. And then if I add 30 lines to that to get me to the next page, click on the second conditional element, I then shoot down to label number 2, which starts at line 46 to 52. Okay, and then that repeats all the way down, and you'll see the last one, line number 286 to 292. So it's just basically appending each page for however many lines there are on that page, in this case 30, to all the way down. So if you've got a 60 page or a 66 page, the first page will start at line 1 to 66, and page 2 will start at line 67 to 132, 142, or whatever it is. And then if we look at the actual condition, the condition then says, right, when this condition is true, I'm taking the lines that you've specified and I'm passing them into another overlay, in this case called multi-ups S, the sub-overlay. Multi-ups C is the control, the main overlay. And what it will do is you'll say, based on this condition, I've just set the condition where position 21 is equal to blank, so that I've got a condition that works. That then says, I'm going to pass the next 7 lines of spool file into my sub-overlay. And we can see on the tab in the spool file window, input shows me the whole spool file and all of the data for all pages. The conditional tab shows me what I'm passing to the sub-overlay. So in this case, I'm passing line 16 to line 22, and I'm passing 7 lines. So the sub-overlay itself then receives only 7 lines. And if I look at the second condition, I have exactly the same, but you'll see that label 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So it's taking the data from the relevant position within the spool file. Then on the formatting tab of the conditional element, I can then offset using a vertical displacement and a horizontal displacement to position the output of the label. So if you look at the results window on the right hand side, I'm just going to turn the grids off so you can actually see it more clearly. On the first label, I'm using an absolute position, which is 0.40, and this is a measurement in pounds, which is the default for interval. So basically, a measurement of 40 from the top and 0 from the left, and it will position the label there. So when I go to my second label, my vertical displacement is the same as label 1, because that's the measurement from the top, but then I displace from the left hand side 3.2 inches, or 3 inches and 200 pounds from the left hand side, and that gives me the varying positions or so. So if I change this to, you'll see that if I change that to 2 inches, it's controlling the movement of the second label. Okay, and then within the actual conditional element itself, if I go back to my input window and click on the edit button here, this then edits the sub overlay rather than the main overlay. So it flips now from my, making changes at the control level to making changes at the sub overlay level. And you can see that the conditional elements have all been highlighted in red to tell me that now I'm maintaining the conditional overlay, not the main overlay. So if I click on the frame elements, you'll see that the frame itself and the remapping position, I'm just dealing with label 10 at the bottom. So the frame over here, I've just drawn the frame. So I'm now remapping the contents based on the data that's been passed into this sub overlay. Now, when we deal with remaps, if you remember, the remap started in position in line 16 to 22 for the first label, and 56 or 46 to 52 in the second label. Everything now has a relative position where line number 1 is the first line of the spool file data. So in every overlay, in every conditional element that gives rise to this second overlay, I can refer to line 1 no matter where it appeared on the main overlay. So this gives me total control now of the mapping and the formatting function of each individual label within there. So that's mechanically how it all works. You can see from the results window here that it gives us a nice label output, and if I click on my Swift view, I'm using a kid's font, a kid's handwriting font, just to make it stand out. But you can see that there's 10 labels on there, and then you would position those within the perforated locations on the A4 printed sheet to make sure that they're printed in the right format, in the right position on the page, and then everything's fine. You can also use a PDF output. So if we output this in a PDF, you can see a PDF document and so on. Okay, so that's one example of a particular label printing. If we look at dispatch, I'm just going to close this down. I'm going to go to a Toyota Kanban. This is a dispatch label for Toyota. And in here, whenever we should, this is within an automotive components manufacturing company. If you're dealing with Toyota, every product has to be labelled. So in here, we're taking an individual spool file page. We switch it on the multi-up feature so that we print 3 pages at the same time on one piece of paper, and then we have a repetition of using a conditional element to draw the actual contents of the label. So you see this gets a little bit more complex in that all of the instructions for one label are embedded within the sub overlay, and we use the sub overlay using a conditional element to position it on the actual page. So you can see that we've got 3 labels appearing on one page and so on. And this is, I think it's a 4-page. Actually, I've got an old version of the designer running here. So when it prints out, if we look at our page 2, it's printing the data at the top. So I've got 4 labels. So the first 3 print on the first page, and the 4th one prints at the top of the second page. And then because there's no data to fulfill the conditional element, that gets switched off. So you're only going to get 4 labels. Okay, so that comes to the end of the bite-sized training for this week. So hopefully we'll build some future bite-sized training on other topics. But please let me know what you're interested in, and I'll build something specific for those. So now I'm going to open up the